Namaste. Today we just read a letter of Sri Aurobindo because very often there is a not just confusion, misunderstanding about certain terms that are used in the context of yoga. Yoga itself is a term which has been used in various ways, from physical postures to mind-body balancing to balancing of the gunas, and we have already spoken about it in the course of the talk on Sanatan Dharma. So, another word which is very commonly misunderstood is the word spiritual. So, it's like a category in which all kinds of things that we have our own idea are put into. For instance, in one of the letters, Sri Aurobindo says very clearly, spirituality is not high intellectuality. So some people feel that those who give talks or those who are well versed with scriptures, those who have read a lot about spiritual things, books of spiritual, those who can recite the Gita, those who visit the temple every day, they are spiritual people. Now, one may do all these things and yet not be spiritual at all. One may do none of these things and yet be spiritual. And of course, one may do both. It's not that, it's either or. Take the classic example of Ravana. Ravana did, he had read the Vedas. In fact, he is credited with making the Vedas very popular. He's the one and he was given the task. But at some point, ego took hold over him. And therefore, he fell because he thought, I am an instrument, a great instrument. So, we use the word very vaguely. So, spirituality is not high intellectuality. It's good if one is intellectually endowed and then one can turn this instrument to the service of the spirit. Blows it as the spirit blows. Unlike as of now, the intellect is used as a trumpet for only one's own ego expansion. So in intellect, like any other instrument, heart, emotions, will, everything should be at the disposal of the spirit for use. But in itself, intellect is not the same as spirit. Spirit is spirit, intellect is intellect. This one part we must understand. Second is, there is another confusion that spirituality is morality. Now the Gita clears this confusion abundantly. Spirituality is supra-moral, supra-ethical, not infra-moral, infra-ethical, but supra-moral. It transcends morality, it transcends ethics. And we know that very well, that how the Gita's dilemma starts with that. Between two equally valid standpoints, according to Arjuna. One is he has to fight a battle, which as a Kshatriya, it is his dharma. He is not fighting for expansion. He is fighting because it's his natural right to at least have a place for a kingdom to himself and his brothers. So it's perfectly valid. On the other hand, there is another dharma. Morally, he is not supposed to, fight against his own family members, people who have looked up to, people who have helped him, his own guru, his own, grandsire, all these people he should not be fighting. So there are two dilemmas. And we see that how spirituality, Shri Krishna in the Gita reveals him that you go beyond it. So there is another standpoint, and that standpoint is again morality, idealism. They are, when we struggle in the mental consciousness, they are like temporary signposts. Scriptural knowledge is like a little lamp we carry. As Sri Aurobindo says in one of the aphorisms, that Vedanta is like a lamp, which when you are struggling in ignorance, you need it. But when you have found Krishna, supposing one is going with Krishna, traveling all the time, walking, he is always there. And there is a dilemma. What are you going to do? Say, wait, let me consult the scripture? Or will you ask him? The answer is very obvious, isn't it? And whatever Krishna says, you are not going to again go back to the scripture and see whether it has a sanction or not. So, scriptural reading, morality, ethics, idealism, high intellectuality, they all have their place when we are struggling in our mental evolution in ignorance. They are a kind of imperfect light, a candle light, the light of the sattvic mind, if you want to put it, which is necessary for man in ignorance. Man cannot just do away with it. But there comes a time when the evolution goes beyond the boundaries of the mind. By mind, it is meant beyond the boundaries of the human mind. The moment that there is something which opens up to what is beyond the human mind, then real spirituality begins. So we'll talk about it little later. Similarly, there is a surface understanding of our life, surface living. One may be very religious, but be very egoistic. One may think me, my family, and now obviously you may be very religious. Again, you may have studied a lot of scripture. You look after your all those who are connected with us through the ego, and there may be nothing spiritual about it. We have to deepen the consciousness, go behind the veil of the surface consciousness. That has to be broken or torn or pierced through. Then we begin to become aware of another dimension of spiritual existence, which is behind the surface consciousness, the inner being and the psychic being. So one way we can enter into the what is called a spiritual consciousness is by going beyond the human mind, by climbing the steps of the human mind. The second is by going deeper than the surface consciousness, deeper even than the inner being. And there are many other aspects of it, but this is the minimum, that spirituality is not about anything external. It's a new way of being. Let's take some examples. Now, here we use a very vague term that somebody who has gone beyond the human mind is spiritual. So everything is spiritual in the same way. Let's take an example with regard to it. Now, Sri Aurobindo's letter directly refers to that. For example, there were people who thought Sri Aurobindo is using the word supramental as a synonymous for spiritual. Because going beyond mind is spiritual. Supra-mental is going beyond mind. So Sri Aurobindo draws the distinction between going beyond the human mind but not yet beyond the mind. Mind is a vast domain, and all the layers of mind have not yet manifested in human beings. Even the mental evolution is yet to continue. Let's take, for example, Ramanujam. He used to receive inspiration from very high sources of mind. A goddess used to literally come and he used to get these revelations. There are scientists who get such revelations. So where are they getting from? They are getting from what is called as spiritual mind. But it is, if we talk to someone, generally people will say spiritual. But it's a spiritual mind. Now, what is the distinction between mind and supermind? Mind, even the utmost level of mind, which is the overmind, which is not, it's not easy for the overmind to express in human or through the human mind, except in certain poets who have risen to great heights. In India, of course, we have mystic literature in the Western context. When someone says, I think Blake's poem, when he says, to hold eternity in a grain of sand. Now, this is a very profound line from very high reaches of the mind. But it's from the spiritual mind, but not yet supramental. Now, the distinction is that mind, even its highest reaches, ultimately, the power of the mind is to divide. Even in its widest speed, when it looks at a much larger configuration of things, even the cosmic mind can look at it. Still, it cannot make the further reconciliation, the great step where it can unite the divine, God, and creation, if you want to put it like that. So still there will be some division. Even in the highest reaches of our mind, we can look here below. Let's take, for example, that one is standing on Mount Everest, the highest height accessible on earth. One looks below and says, this is earth. Looks above and says, it is sky. But what is spiritual consciousness? When you are looking at the entire thing, let's say from outside space. You are doing a space travel, and from there you see the moon, you see the earth, you see all the layers of atmosphere simultaneously and together. So the spiritual vision, the supramental vision is different. Now, Mount Everest is symbol of the highest reach of spiritual mind. Highest that one can go. It's a great vantage point. You can look at everything below. But it's not as in a single sweep, you cannot see everything. It's impossible at that layer. So supermind is the one where we have the grand reconciliation, the synthesis between the one and the many, between God and world, between the creator and the creation, between soul and nature. That's why Sri Aurobindo speaks of the supermind. If we don't find the supermind, if we don't ascend to that level, now it is of course operating upon earth. If we don't open to the supramental influx, then We may have spiritual experiences, which is good. There may even be what is called as some psycho-spiritual transformation, but it will not lead to ultimately to the divine life upon earth. Because there will be parts in our nature which will always remain obscure, which will always remain hidden in the subconscious terrain, parts of nature which are on the surface. So we will not have the ultimate possibility of divine life upon earth. The body itself will be subject to disease and disintegration because the body is still largely a creation which has emerged out of inconscient. So there is a great hold of the inconscient upon the body. It's only the supermind which can annihilate the difficulties. So that is why Sri Aurobindo speaks of the supramental as distinct from spiritual. We can take some analogy. One analogy is of the spiritual consciousness is of this Chandrama, moon. And of the supramental consciousness is the sun. Now, moon is something wonderful. In the darkness of ignorance, we look up to the moon. And if it is full moon, it's delightful. But moon doesn't have a light of its own. Its source of light is from the sun. It's a reflected light. Second, moon waxes and wanes. See, that is the story of Shiva, Chandrasekhara. There is a curse on moon by Daksha Prajapati. You must be knowing that story. So what is the curse? That you will die. Why? Because moon has done something. Now I know this story has been explained in 27 Rohini Nakshatra and all. I don't want to explain it astronomically, but spiritually. It's a mystic story. Now he has done something which, according to the framework of Daksha Prajapati is the mental consciousness, very rationally he governs, he has created rules of existence. Now he has done something which doesn't fall within the frame. What he has done? He loves Rohini, but he is married elsewhere. Now this is something which is not acceptable now, which is a greater law, love or a social custom. So Daksha Prajapati curses him that you have done something very wrong and hence you will die. So he goes to Shiva that you also, Shiva is also free. That's why Daksh can't allow Shiva to come. Daksh cannot understand Shiva because Shiva is free. So he says, you only can help me because no one else will help me or understand. So Shiva says, okay, I'll keep you on my head. And I cannot completely annul the curse of Daksh. Why he cannot completely annul? He is the absolute. Because in manifestation, there is a rule and process, mental way of looking at things. Shiva cannot annul it. He can create, there is a zone beyond the mind. But you cannot annul this. So he says, I cannot annul the curse. But what I'll do is, you will be on my head. So you will come to near death, again you will rise. You will waxing and waning of the moon. Very interesting story. The spiritual consciousness, always invariably, there will be a waxing and waning, waxing and waning. In Savitri it is described very beautifully. You cannot have that constant state all the time in every part unless you withdraw. That's why people who aspire for constant living in the spiritual consciousness, what do? They like to withdraw from the world and enter into samadhi. And when they enter into samadhi, they withdraw, ultimately they cut off from the world. But if you are coming into the world, there will be a waxing and waning, eclipsing, and then again you come back. But with the sun, there is nothing like that. Sun lives in its own light, its own splendor. Sunlight is not just light or knowledge, it is also power. Now again another difference between the spiritual mind. You see, spiritual mind has a limited power. It's a power of light mainly. But the supramental sun, it is not just the knowledge, it's a power, it's dynamic will. It can recreate. The seasons change because of that. The planets circulate because of the sun. Everything on earth is because of sun. Sun gives birth to things, sustains them, and even is the great destroyer. So that unity of consciousness lies in the supramental. So again we have to understand that between the human mind and the supramental there is a range where we can have experiences, but they are spiritual. They are all reflected light. Even intuition is a reflected light. Higher mind. Sri Aurobindo speaks of these steps. Let's take another analogy. You ask somebody living in Haridwar and ask where is the Ganges. So where he'll guide you to one of the ghats. Or Varanasi. And you say, if you take a bath here, tar jaoge. You will be ultimate, So he'll say, okay, but I want to go to source of the Ganges. So somebody will direct you to go to Gangotri. Now what is Gangotri? Gangotri is a glacier. But that is also not the origin. You say, where is Ganges? This is a glacier. Oh, you have to go to the extreme end of Gangotri. What is there? There is Gomukh. There the glacier is melting, tip, 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 and each drop is Ganges. So you go there. Now you want to know where did Ganges still come here from? So a mystic will now take you still further. So mystic will say, Ganges are in the Jata of Shiva. So if you have the great fortune to go to Lord Shiva and say, I want to have the darshan of original Ganges. So what he will say, no, original Ganges is not even here. Original Ganges has come from the high heavens. It has come from Brahmaji's Kamandalu. So go to Brahmaji. Lord, I want to see the Ganges in its origin. Now you've already gone very far from the human consciousness. So what will Brahmaji say? No, actually I have only collected the material. Material was in Vishnu's heart. That's how the Ganges originated, no? When Shiva danced and Vishnu and Brahma were the witness, such beautiful emotions arose within Vishnu and Brahmaji captured it, and that became ultimately the Ganges. So you go to Vishnu, Lord, where is the Ganges I want to see? So he will say, no, originator is Shiva's dance. So you go to Shiva, that Jatawala nahi, I want to see your dance. So he'll say, actually, even this dance is not the origin. Origin is delight. I am moved by Parvati, the supreme delight of existence. It is she because of whom I have danced this dance. Otherwise, my dance is Tandava. Because of her, I danced this way. And because of that dance, there is the origin of Ganges. Now you see, this is the difference. So at different levels of ascension, we experience life differently. So in the spiritual mind, which most commonly is called a spiritual, vague term, there are different levels of ascension, which will take us up to Gomukh, the overmind creation. But if you want to go further, then you have to take a further ascension from the highest ranges of the mind into the supermind. Supermind itself has layers. Sri Aurobindo speaks of 3 layers of the supermind. So there again, there are levels through which we pass. This is one aspect of it. But also there is another idea that spirit is all. Atmeva bhut vijanata, which is so true. So if spirit is all, why are we making a distinction between spiritual and mental and vital and physical? Well, this is only for the sake of manifestation. So in a sense, we can say that whatever is above your consciousness is spiritual. You see, if you ask a cat what is spiritual, so cat will say, this human being whom I see is spiritual. Or this monkey whom I see is spiritual. Ask a monkey, monkey will say, this human being, that's my future. That is spiritual. Ask a worm, an insect, what is spiritual? It will say, you know what? This lion, tiger, this cat, this is spiritual. I want to be like that. I want to fly like a bird, but I can only fly like a little butterfly. You ask matter what is spiritual. If it could reply, it will say, when life springs within me, life is spiritual. And all of them will be right. So spirituality can be used in several senses. One of them is the cosmic spirit, manifest in countless ways. So in manifestation, there is a stair. So we can say in one sense that all is the spirit and manifestation of the spirit. But it may create one kind of confusion. In manifestation, we say the spirit becomes relative. In matter, it is limited manifestation of the spirit. So it is manifesting itself in degrees, like the waxing and waning moon. And finally, for us human beings, zeroing in or zooming in on human beings, going beyond the human mind, what is the human mind? Is the rational mind. We have the origin of the spiritual domain. Now in this spiritual domain, what is the sign? It's not about just having some experiences which are okay, they are important in their own right in the spiritual domain, but the whole functioning becomes very different. Take an example. Now rational mind, how does it look at the moon? Ask a rational person, what is the moon? You will say it's a upagraha of Prithvi. It's a, it's come out of earth. It's cold, it will describe everything. So you say, but people have written poetry on this, that it's so delightful. That's all emotions, I'm not talking of emotional being, I am rational creature. Nothing like that. What about that story of moon being on the head of Shiva? Don't ask me to be superstitious. that some superstitious fellows in India, they didn't understand anything. So they wrote such fantastic story, and you are equally a fool to believe in them. Because it sees it in a certain way. You can't say he's wrong, you can say he's limited. That is what ignorance is about. So you go one step further, higher mind. And you say, sir, what is the moon? And what he'll say, the crescent moon. It is the spiritual mind which illumines us when there is the night of ignorance. Our rational mind can't understand what is the night of ignorance, what is the illumination, how it is resting on the Shiva's head. Well, Shiva is the eternal, the absolute, the stillness and the calm of the Lord. The Akshara Brahma, if you want to put it. And that's where it comes, waxes and wanes. It still doesn't know the Purushottama who is beyond. So you go still further and ask somebody with a illumined mind or intuitive mind, what is the moon? He say, oh moon, it's delight. And that delight is within me. Ask a being of the overmind, what is the moon? He will say, moon is a god. Come, you want to meet the moon? Chandrama Devta, he'll come. He's a being, he's a force, he's not just a consciousness, he's a being. And that being has manifest himself in the form of the physical moon. And many moons, not just one moon. Because this being can manifest in countless ways. It's a being, it's not just, it's also a consciousness. So at the overmind, when you ask supramental, what is the moon? So he'll say, moon is my child. That's all. Spiritual mind, it is born out of the sun. Nourished by me, supported by me, and it mediates between me and the earth. When there is night, moon is the mediator. Now you see the same moon. But as we ascend through the layers of the spiritual mind, the vision changes, the understanding changes, the perspective changes. And this has to continue. So each time we ascend to a level, there is, Mother uses the word, reversal of consciousness. We understand life in a very different way. In normal yogas, you don't talk about reversal. Why? Because you don't want to come back to life. You experience, you want to withdraw. So it is, the term used is samadhi. But in Sri Aurobindo's yoga, there is reversal. It's not just a samadhi. It is samadhi, but more than samadhi. So you look back upon life, you come back to life, and at each level you have to get back to life again and redo it, remake it. That's why this yoga takes so much time. At each level, you have to once again understand, once again pick up the threads, once again work upon them step by step, layer by layer, till finally all is molded in the vision of the supramental truth. Then again, not only the way our thinking, now thinking, rational mind thinks in one way. Then higher mind and beyond, there is intuition. There is an intuitive understanding of light. The cognition is very different. There is knowledge by identity. There is inspiration. So many aspects open up, doors of knowledge. You don't have to labor things by studying from here and there and gathering information. So the whole mode of operation of the mind changes. What about the heart? Again, the same way. Heart grows very wide. So certain things which are inexplicable, unbelievable for the human heart becomes plausible and possible for the higher mind and beyond. And of course, for the supramental, Sri Aurobindo speaks of the supramental love and its intensities and the ananda. So this is why what we have to understand for the moment, that there is a difference between spiritual and supramental. Of course, there is a difference also between psychic and the spiritual, but that we'll talk about maybe next time. But let me read a letter first. Because somebody has said, oh, Sri Aurobindo uses the word supramental, it's same thing. We use the word spiritual. So Sri Aurobindo says, if spiritual and supramental were the same thing, as you say, my readers imagine, then all the sages and devotees and yogis and sadhaks throughout the ages would have been supramental beings. Look at the touch of humor, divine humor. And all I have written about the supermind would be so much superfluous stuff, useless and OTOs. For decades, Sri Aurobindo is trying to bring down the supermind. He said, if already spiritual experience a lot of people had, so there's nothing new about it. I am doing something which has not been done on earth. Because very often people have this tendency to say, oh, Sri Aurobindo, he's also a spiritual person. He's not spiritual person. He is supramental person, if you want to put it like that. Which is very different from a spiritual being, spiritual person. Anybody who had spiritual experiences would then be a supramental being. Logically, if the two are same. The ashram would be chock full of supramental beings and every other ashram in India too. Because spiritual experiences are there. So many kinds. Spiritual experiences can fix themselves in the inner consciousness and alter it, transform it if you like. One can realize the divine everywhere. The self in all and all in the self, the universal Shakti doing all things. One can feel merged in the cosmic self or full of ecstatic bhakti or ananda. But one may and usually does still go on in the outer parts of nature, thinking with the intellect or at best the intuitive mind, willing with a mental will, feeling joy and sorrow on the vital surface, undergoing physical afflictions and suffering from the struggle of life in the body with death and disease. We have this idea about yogis. And then when you read the story of Vishwamitra and Vasishtha, you are wondering, how come Vishwamitra have still ambition left? After he has become a Rajrishi, he wants to be called a Brahmarishi. You read some of the Puranic stories, you will see, oh my God, they are so deadly creatures. Gods even, so much ambition, so much ego. Human beings are better. But look at the story of Vasishtha. Some of us may be aware that when his sons were killed, later on he forgave Vishwamitra. That is something amazing. How could he do that? But initially he went into such depression that he jumped into a river. Can you imagine taking an extreme step like that? Outer nature can still be caught. But when he jumped into the river, the doors of destiny, because you see how destiny operates. Beings like Rishi Vasishtha, what they do, destiny changes itself, because it's not like the normal laws of nature will operate. The laws of nature change. So he jumped into the river to die. And the river said, my God, I don't want to take this papa on myself. So what it does, it broke all his bonds. He had tied himself up because he knows swimming. So if he jumps, he will die. So it broke all the bonds. And you know what is that river called? Vipasha. That's how that name came. Because it broke the pash of the bonds. Now it's a symbolic story also. Symbolically also we can understand. See, that's the beauty of this story. Symbolically, there is a state when you feel utterly helpless. You have gone to the extreme limit of ignorance. You have tried. You just don't know. In that utter state of helplessness, you abandon yourself. And when you thus abandon yourself, that is the time all the bonds are broken. Now, this is a symbolic aspect of the story. But the story is otherwise real. So rishis do go through their own challenges. Not only rishis, yogis, people. Because outer nature doesn't get changed. But we impose it that, but there is the same outer nature. So Sri Aurobindo doesn't want that. That's why he says, I don't want to give my sanction to the old fiasco. I don't want to put a old wine in new bottle. So he is saying the outer nature. You see, you ask even yogis, they will tell you with a mental, rational thing, the difference between the mother's vision and even the yogi's vision. See, during this corona, all the yogis have said their bit, isn't it? Almost everybody who is present on planet at this point of time known. What do they say? Corona is real, it's a virus, but I'll do something about it. Do this, do that. Ask the mother, what did she say? It's a vibration, and along with the vibration there is a suggestion and there is a fear mixed, and that creates what scientists discover as virus. How could Sri Aurobindo know this? Both Sri Aurobindo and the mother. No other yogi speaks about it like this. This is the difference between the yogic vision and the supramental vision, if you want to put it. Because yogis are still confined. They know about inner things. They may tell you about, what may happen in your future. It's quite possible. Some salient incidents or, anyways, that is not, you don't need much to know that. They can know your thoughts. All this is possible. But they cannot know the hidden heart of things. Still for them, matter is matter. And soul is soul. But Sri Aurobindo, what does he say when he looks into matter? He says, matter is a condition for the manifestation of the spirit. Divine has become matter. This vision can only come with the supramental. So the knowledge in a yogi is still limited. The will is still a mental will. I will, I pray. But with Sri Aurobindo, the entire Second World War, look at the difference between idealism and Sri Aurobindo's vision. Gandhiji, Subhash Chandra Bose, all these people with their idealism, they don't know what Hitler is up to, how to handle him. And Poland, listen to Gandhiji until Hitler marched inside and massacred everyone. Why? Because he doesn't understand the laws of nature. He's a mental being, moral being, which is all right. Nothing wrong with being mental and moral. But you don't mix up bitter gourd and, not bitter gourd, what is it called? That snake gourd and lauki. They're two different vegetables, by the way. But they look very similar. Sorry for the analogy. You don't mix oranges and peaches if you want to use a real analogy. You must know this is orange, this is peach. It may look similar on the surface. So spiritual and supramental are as different as that. Then he further goes on to say, the change then only will be, the change means if there's only the spiritual aspect comes out. The change then only will be that the inner self will watch all that without getting disturbed or bewildered. And as spiritual consciousness, we can do that. Separate ourselves and say, this is this transient suffering world. Anityam masukham lokam. What is real? Bhajaswamam. The Lord is real. As regard this is all illusion, illusion, illusion. That's it. But the supramental vision will see what is hidden in the illusion. Mother uses a very beautiful analogy. She says, in everything there is a grain, ingot of gold. It is covered with heaps of dust. So normally we throw the gold with the dust, saying it's all illusion. But we have to be a gold catcher, extract the gold, purify it, refine it, until you get that gold. That is how. Then you get the gold, keep it. Then more and more in every sphere of human life, every activity of human nature, there is an ingot of gold, which is hidden. In the cells, there is this supramental gold, which has to be extracted. But the spiritual consciousness will separate and say, this is matter, this is spirit. The change then only will be that the inner self will watch all that without getting disturbed or bewildered, with the perfect equality, taking it as an inevitable part of nature. Inevitable, at least so long as one does not withdraw to the self out of nature. This is what all the yogis say. Mother was asked about, but Ramdas says this. He said, I know all of them. What Ramdas has said, what Sri Ramakrishna has said, he said, I know all of them. That nature cannot be changed. But I am saying it can be changed. That's why they talk about withdrawing from nature. Because they know certain aspect just cannot be changed. Even the entire nature, withdraw. But here, every aspect, there is a line in Savitri. Each part in us desires its own absolute. Can you imagine? Each part is each part. There is nothing left out after that. Desires its own absolute. So, that is not the transformation I envisage, the withdrawal of the self from nature. It is quite another power of knowledge, another kind of will, another luminous nature of emotion and aesthesis. We are not asked to become unemotional beings. It's one of the questions, no? But first we have to get rid of that poison stuff. It's a tapasya. She speaks about the fourfold tapasya. Tapasya of love. It's a tapasya. She doesn't say, oh, all human emotion is all. To transform it, what a tapasya is required. Tapasya literally means tap. You don't succumb to anything which can bring in the movement of ego and the lower self, and slowly it will become, it will transform. It's a long process. That's not the transformation I envisage. It is quite another power of knowledge, another kind of will, another luminous nature of emotion and aesthesis. the sense of beauty. Another constitution of the physical consciousness that must come in by the spiritual, by the supramental change. And then, of course, he says that you can experience divine at many levels. So, in a spiritual consciousness, we can experience divine at a mental level. That's why there is an experience, but it's through the layer of the mind. Now, normally one cannot, distinguish because the layer is such. Like supposing there is a whole wall, there is a mirror, nothing else, and you look at the mirror. Now, or take another example that there is a transparent mirror. There used to be advertisement of Saint-Gobain glass. Remember? So there is something on the other side, but this man is walking. He doesn't know there is a glass. So he ends up knocking himself because he thinks, I can see that person and I can just walk and meet. But you can't meet. You can see from the glass. So even the most purified mind, spiritual intelligence, yet is a spiritual intelligence. There is a gap. You are seeing through the transparent mirror. If at all one can do that, it's not a small upalabdhi, but still, it is still through the veil, thin veil, transparent veil, but still the veil is there. Now, this is the difference between spiritual and supramental. One more small letter, then we'll stop. The spiritual realization can be had on any plane by contact with the divine who is everywhere, or by perception of the self within, which is pure and untouched by the outer movements. The supermind is something transcendent, a dynamic truth consciousness which is not there yet, something to be brought down from above. Now, this is the difference. Supermind is transcendent. Transcendent of what? Of the cosmic consciousness. So there are many aspects even in cosmic consciousness of which we are not aware. But what Sri Aurobindo wants is something which is beyond even the cosmos, which is there beyond, but it has not yet been activated here as a concrete thing. And we can take that example that long, long back, since the days of Adams, there was possibility of solar power. No? But where were human beings looking for power? In coal, from the bowels of earth. Then petrol, still bowels of earth. Then electricity, Vidvat. And now they speak about solar. Is solar something new? It was always there. But suddenly man discovered that, we have inexhaustible source of power and light and we can tap it. Of course, just wishful thinking won't do. Then you have to lay down the panels and the whole process and paraphernalia is there. So supermind is like that. It has always been there but behind. What we have been tapping into is all the domains of the mind, higher mind, illumined mind, and we have been tapping into these layers and levels. But there is something transcendent, which we know there is something transcendent, but we don't know how to bring it into our own lives. So to bring it into our own lives, activate it, make it working, functional, normal, natural, operational, very naturally as we breathe, is the supramental transformation that Sri Aurobindo speaks of. So we'll stop here. Namaste.